Let me ask you something. What would you do if the person who's supposed to know you best reduced your entire existence to a single sentence in a room full of people who now believe it? Would you correct them? Would you laugh it off? Or would you stay quiet and let them keep talking? Because that's exactly what I did. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The restaurant was one of those places where everything felt expensive, even the silence between conversations. Dim lighting, crystal glasses, soft music that made every word feel heavier than it should. And right in the center of it all sat my husband, Ethan Cole, 34, confident, polished, the kind of man who knew how to command a room without raising his voice. Tonight mattered to him. You could tell by the way he sat a little straighter, spoke a little sharper, smiled just a little too much. This dinner wasn't casual. This was the dinner, the kind that could change his career. I sat beside him. Quiet, composed, black dress, minimal jewelry, nothing flashy. Not because I didn't have anything to show, but because I didn't need to. And when he introduced me like that, just as stay-at-home mom, I smiled. Not forced, not bitter, just calm. And that's what confused people the most. A few chuckles spread across the table. Nothing cruel, just casual, dismissive. The kind of laughter that says, "We understand your place now." One of Ethan's colleagues leaned back and joked, "Must be nice. No deadlines, no meetings." I nodded politely. No correction, no explanation. And because here's the thing, they weren't wrong, at least not in the way they understood it. You see, I'm Lena Cole. I'm 26 years old. And yes, I am a stay-at-home mom. Our daughter just turned 1. My days are filled with routines, schedules, quiet moments, and long nights. That part? Completely true. But truth is a strange thing. Sometimes it's not about what's said, it's about what's left out. Ethan continued talking, sliding effortlessly into business mode. Numbers, strategies, growth projections. I listened, not because I had to, but because I recognized every single thing he was saying. Every structure, every idea, every framework. And here's the question you should be asking right now. How? How does a stay-at-home mom understand everything happening at a high-level corporate table? I glanced across the table. Oh, and that's when I noticed him. Victor Hale, 42, sharp eyes, quiet presence, the kind of man who didn't waste words and didn't miss details. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't talking much either. He was watching. Not Ethan, me. At first it was subtle, a quick glance, then another, then longer, like he was trying to remember something, or someone. I held his gaze for half a second longer than necessary. Then I looked away and smiled. Ethan didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was too focused on impressing the room, too focused on being seen, too focused on controlling the narrative, including mine. At one point, I opened my mouth to speak. Just a small comment, nothing major. Ethan gently cut in. Lena keeps things running at home so I can focus on this. Polite, smooth, final. The conversation moved on. And just like that, I disappeared from it again. But Victor didn't let it go. I could feel it, the shift, the curiosity, the recognition trying to surface. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing just enough to signal something had clicked. Almost. But not fully. Not yet. And then it happened, right in the middle of Ethan explaining a strategy, one he seemed very proud of. Victor stopped. Mid-sentence, mid-thought, mid-breath, he turned, looked directly at me, and said, "Wait." Everything went quiet, and in that silence, I knew he was about to say it. Let's rewind for a second, because moments like that, where an entire room goes silent, they don't just happen out of nowhere. They're built, quietly, slowly, over time. I met Ethan when I was 21. He was 29, established, focused, already climbing. Back then, and he looked at me like I was something rare, not because I was loud or attention-grabbing, but because I noticed things, patterns, gaps, opportunities. I asked questions most people didn't think to ask, and he liked that, at least in the beginning. We built something that felt balanced. He worked long hours. I was finishing my degree. Business analytics, systems modeling, all the technical stuff most people find boring. We'd sit at the kitchen table late at night, laptops open, exchanging ideas. Sometimes he'd bring up work problems. Sometimes I'd solve them, not intentionally, just naturally. Wait, he'd say, leaning closer to my screen. That actually makes sense. And I'd shrug. Because to me, it wasn't impressive, it was obvious. But things changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just gradually. And after we got married, after his career picked up, after I got pregnant. The dynamic shifted. Conversations became shorter, more one-sided. He talked. I listened. Not because I had nothing to say, but because he stopped asking. Then came our daughter. And with her, a new label. Stay-at-home mom. Now don't get it twisted. That role is real, demanding, constant. But here's what Ethan and everyone else assumed, that it was the only thing I was. What he didn't see were the nights. After the baby was asleep, after the house was quiet, after the world stopped paying attention. That's when I worked. Laptop open, lights low, building something. Quietly, deliberately, without needing permission. It started small. Freelance analysis, data optimization, strategy consulting, anonymous work. No face, no meetings. On no noise, just results. Then it grew. Faster than I expected. Faster than anyone would have believed. Clients came in through referrals, then companies, then bigger companies. And eventually, people like Victor. But here's the key detail. I never hit it. Not really. Money came in, bills got paid, sometimes before Ethan even noticed them. Subscriptions, investments, systems running in the background. He saw the outcomes. He just never questioned the source. And when I did try to mention things, small comments, light openings, he'd respond with things like, "That's great, babe," or "as long as it makes you happy." Not dismissive on the surface, but final, closed. So eventually, I stopped explaining. Back at the dinner table, I sat quietly while Ethan spoke. Confident, smooth, pitching ideas. I'm explaining strategies, breaking down frameworks. Frameworks I recognized instantly because I built them. Not for him, not with him, but independently. And yet, there he was, using them, presenting them, owning them, without even realizing where they came from. You might be wondering, did I feel angry, betrayed? No, not exactly. What I felt was something else, something quieter, more precise. I was observing, measuring, waiting. Because here's the thing about underestimation. It reveals more about the person doing it than the person receiving it. And tonight, this room, this table full of people who had already decided who I was, it was about to reveal everything. Victor shifted in his seat again, subtle, controlled, but different now. He wasn't just curious anymore, he was searching. "Morning, Lena," he said suddenly, his tone casual, but too intentional to be accidental. "What do you usually do during the day?" I opened my mouth, but Ethan beat me to it. "She runs the house," he said with a light laugh. "Keeps everything together so I can focus on work." A few nods, a few smiles. Conversation ready to move on. But Victor didn't nod. He didn't smile. He just looked at me. Longer this time, sharper. And then, very slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Not to check messages, not to disengage, but to look at something specific. His eyes moved between the screen and me, back and forth, back and forth. And then, just for a split second, his expression changed. Recognition. Not full, not confirmed, but close, very close. He leaned forward slightly, lowered the phone, and had narrowed his eyes just enough to signal one thing. He was about to connect the dots. And when he did, everything at that table was going to change. Let me ask you this. Have you ever watched someone slowly realize the truth? Right in front of you? Not all at once, not dramatically, but piece by piece, like a puzzle locking into place. That's exactly what was happening to Victor, and no one else at the table saw it. Not yet. Ethan kept talking, confident as ever. And this model allows scalable integration without increasing operational risk. He gestured slightly with his hand, like he owned every word, like he understood every layer of what he was saying. But Victor, he wasn't listening anymore. His attention had shifted completely, locked, focused, on me. Ethan, Victor interrupted suddenly, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the rhythm of the conversation. Ethan paused mid-sentence, smiled, slightly confused. Yeah? Victor tilted his head, calm, curious. But there was something underneath it now, something heavier. Where did you get that framework from? Simple question, but the kind that doesn't have a simple answer if you don't actually know it. Ethan hesitated, just for a second, but I noticed. Victor noticed too. It's something we've been developing internally, Ethan said, smoothing it over quickly. Confident again? Too confident. Victor didn't respond right away. He just nodded slowly, like he'd heard the answer and didn't believe it. I shifted slightly in my seat. Not nervous, not uncomfortable, just aware, because now we were getting closer. And the rest of the table started to feel it too. That subtle tension, that shift in energy when something unsaid starts pressing into the room. Victor turned to me again. Direct this time, no pretense. Have we met before? There it was. Before I could answer, Ethan chuckled lightly. No, he said. Lena's not in this space. Not in this space. Interesting choice of words. Victor didn't laugh, didn't even glance at Ethan. His eyes stayed on me, waiting. And this time, I didn't let the moment pass. I met his gaze, calm, steady, and said, maybe you've seen my work. Silence. Not the polite kind, not the comfortable kind, the kind that makes people stop breathing for half a second. Ethan turned his head toward me, slowly, confused. What does that mean? He asked, a hint of irritation creeping in. Oh, I didn't answer him. Not yet. Because this moment, it wasn't his anymore. Victor leaned forward, elbows near the table, eyes sharper now. Your work? He repeated quietly. Then he reached for his phone again, unlocked it, scrolled quickly. Everyone was watching now, even the ones who didn't understand what was happening. He stopped scrolling, turned the screen slightly, not enough for everyone to see, just enough to confirm something for himself. Then he looked back at me. And this time, there was no uncertainty left, only recognition. L. Carter Consulting, he said. A name, just a name. But it landed like something heavier. Ethan frowned slightly, glanced between us. What about them? He asked. Victor didn't answer him. He was still looking at me, studying, confirming. And I didn't react. Not immediately, because here's the thing. Timing matters. Reveals aren't just about truth. They're about when the truth lands. The room felt different now, tighter, heavier. One of Ethan's colleagues shifted in his chair, another picked up their glass, then set it back down without drinking. No one was relaxed anymore. Victor leaned in just a little closer, lowered his voice, but not enough to keep it private. You're Lena Carter, aren't you? And just like that, everything stopped. Ethan blinked. Once, twice. Wait, what? He said, looking at me now like he was seeing something unfamiliar. But I didn't rush to answer. I placed my glass gently on the table, folded my hands, and let the silence stretch, just long enough for everyone to feel it. Because once I said it, there was no going back. No more assumptions, no more just, only truth. And truth has a way of changing everything. I finally looked at Victor, gave a small, composed nod, and opened my mouth to speak. You could feel it. That pressure in the air right before something irreversible happens. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the background noise of the restaurant felt distant. Victor's question still hung there. You're Lena Carter, aren't you? And now, there was nowhere for the moment to go, except forward. I gave a small nod. Calm, controlled. I used to go by that name professionally, I said. No dramatic pause, no raised voice. Just the truth. And somehow, that made it hit even harder. Ethan let out a short laugh. The kind people use when something doesn't make sense. Okay, wait, he said, looking between us. I think there's some confusion here. Confusion. That's one word for it. Victor leaned back slightly in his chair, but his eyes never left me. No, he said evenly. There's no confusion. That's when the shift became visible. Not subtle anymore. Not under the surface. One of the colleagues straightened up. Another leaned in. Someone quietly whispered, "What's going on?" Victor continued. L. Carter Consulting developed the adaptive scaling model we've been using for the past year, he said. The same one Ethan is presenting right now? Silence. Heavier this time. Ethan's smile faded. That's not possible, he said quickly. Not angry, not yet. Just resistant. He turned to me, really looked at me now, like he was searching for something familiar, and not finding it. Lena, he said. I met his gaze, steady. And you've seen me work, I said quietly. And that line, it didn't land the way he expected. Because now, he was replaying things, moments, conversations, ideas he thought were his. Victor leaned forward again, more direct now. She's not just associated with it, he said. She built it. There it was, clear, unavoidable. A few people at the table shifted uncomfortably. Someone let out a quiet, "Oh." Ethan blinked again, slower this time. That doesn't make any sense, he said. He stopped himself. But it was too late. You're what? I tilted my head slightly. Not challenging, just waiting. A stay-at-home mom? I finished for him. No anger, no edge, just clarity. He didn't answer, because now, even he could hear it, how small that sounded. I continued. I started consulting after our daughter was born, I said. Remote work, private clients, structured systems. Victor nodded slightly, confirming. She operates under strict anonymity, he added. That's part of why her firm is so selective. The room shifted again. But this time, it wasn't confusion, it was realization. The same people who had laughed earlier, who had nodded along, who had already placed me into a category, they were looking at me differently now. Not because I changed, but because their understanding did. Ethan leaned back in his chair, slowly, like the ground beneath him wasn't as stable as he thought. You built all of that? He asked. I didn't rush the answer. Yes, simple, final. Victor turned to Ethan, and this time, there was no softness left in his tone. You've been pitching her work? He said, without realizing it. And that line, that was the one that landed. Because now, this wasn't just personal, it was professional, public. Ethan froze, completely, and for the first time that night, he didn't have anything to say. The man who had controlled the room from the moment we sat down was now the one being watched, measured, questioned. And the worst part? This wasn't an attack. There was no accusation, no confrontation, just facts. And facts don't argue, they settle. I reached for my glass again, took a small sip, set it down, calm, composed, unshaken. Because for me, nothing had changed, but for everyone else, everything just did. Victor shifted his attention back to Ethan, eyes sharp, voice steady. So, he said, on who exactly have I been negotiating with this entire time? And that question, there was no easy answer to it. That question didn't just hang in the air, it redefined it. No one moved, no one rushed to fill the silence, because for the first time that night, everyone understood exactly what was at stake. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I mean, I've been leading the discussions, he said, his voice noticeably less steady now. The concepts are aligned with what our team has been developing. It sounded weaker the second time. Even he could hear it. Victor didn't interrupt, didn't argue. He just turned his head, slowly, back toward me. Is that accurate? He asked. And just like that, the entire room shifted again. Because now, they weren't listening to Ethan. They were waiting for me. And I didn't rush, didn't try to dominate the moment. I've worked with multiple firms over the past year, I said evenly. Some directly, some through layered communication. Ethan's company was never a direct client of mine. A pause. But the frameworks he's presenting, I continued, they're mine. Originally developed through L. Carter Consulting. Clear, precise, unarguable. Victor nodded once. That was all he needed. Then moving forward, he said, shifting slightly in his chair, I'd prefer to discuss this directly with you. There it was. The pivot. Not loud, not dramatic, but absolute. And just like that, Ethan's role in the most important meeting of his career changed. You could see it on his face. That realization. Not just of what I had built, but of what he had overlooked. For months. Maybe longer. And the rest of the dinner continued. But it wasn't the same. The laughter was gone, replaced by careful words, measured tones. A few colleagues tried to recover, asking me questions now, directly, respectfully. When did you start your firm? How do you manage clients remotely? What industries do you specialize in? The same people who hadn't even asked what I did earlier were now trying to understand everything. I answered calmly, not to impress, not to prove anything, just because now they were finally asking. Ethan stayed mostly quiet, occasionally adding something, but it no longer carried the same weight. And he knew it. After the dinner, the drive home was silent. Not tense, not explosive. Just quiet. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. But his thoughts? Why, you could almost hear them. Finally, he spoke. Why didn't you tell me? Simple question, but not a simple answer. I looked out the window for a moment before responding. I did, I said. He frowned slightly. No, you didn't. Not like that. I turned back to him. I tried to talk about my work, I said calmly. You just never asked enough to hear it. That landed. Because it wasn't an accusation, it was a fact. He exhaled slowly. I thought I understood our life, he said. That's the problem, I replied. You assumed. No anger, no raised voices, just clarity. The consequences over the next few weeks, things shifted. Professionally, Victor followed through, reached out directly. Contracts were restructured, communication lines changed. I became the primary point of contact, not Ethan, or his company stayed involved. But his position in the deal? Reduced. Not out of punishment, just accuracy. And in a corporate environment, accuracy matters. Word spread. Not dramatically, but enough. People in Ethan's circle started to know, not everything, but enough to change how they saw him. Not incompetent, but not the sole mind behind the ideas he presented. It affected him. Of course it did, because reputation in his world is everything. Socially, those same colleagues, they treated me differently now. Conversations shifted, invitations changed. Some were genuine, some were corrective, trying to adjust their behavior after realizing their mistake. I noticed, but I didn't dwell on it, because respect that comes from understanding is different from respect that comes from assumption. And personally, at home, things were quieter, but more aware. Ethan started asking questions, real ones. What are you working on? How do you approach clients? What made you start all of this? Not surface level, not dismissive, actual curiosity. And for the first time in a long time, we were having real conversations again. Not because everything was fixed, but because something had been seen, clearly. And once you see something like that, you can't go back. Final resolution. A few weeks later, another event, another room, another introduction. This time, Ethan stood beside me. Same posture, same presence, but different words. This is my wife, Lena Cole, he said. She's the founder of L. Carter Consulting. No laughter, no assumptions, just recognition. I nodded politely, shook a few hands. And as the conversations began, I noticed something. No one asked if I worked. No one assumed anything. They listened. Not because I demanded it, but because now they understood. I glanced at Ethan briefly. He didn't look embarrassed, didn't look defensive, just aware. And that was enough. Because in the end, This was never about proving anything, not to the room, not to his colleagues, just to one person who had finally stopped assuming and started seeing. I was never just anything, I thought quietly as the room moved around us, and this time, no one needed to say it out loud.